Welcome back to another episode of Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. Today's episode, Benji and I are going to unpack crushes and attraction. This is of vital importance if you're single or if you're married, if you're alive, because if you understand how attraction works and the mechanisms of attraction, you can point your attraction in the direction of your intention. You can be a person who lives up to their ideals, who is attracted to themselves, to their life, and to their spouse or eventual spouse. Or you could do what most people do and just completely be a victim to your emotions and have no control over who you fall in love with and just have a very messy life. That's how most people are. That's what we're taught to do in media and movies. It doesn't have to be this way. We have the opportunity to be in control of our faculties, to be in control of our destiny. And here's the question. I ask it in the podcast and I'll ask it now again. Would you rather fall in love with a different person each week or fall in love with the same person every single day for the rest of your life and for eternity everlasting? Those are the stakes that we're playing with. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everybody, how you doing, folks?
Hello, everyone.
Hey everybody, how you doing, folks?
Hello, everyone.
It's Benjy Francis Uyama
Beyond J.
Andrew Uncle David Love.
Jiminy Love.
We were all amazed when I started working with High Noon, and then I met Uncle Dave, and I was like, "Did you know my middle name is Uncle Dave?" And he's like, "What a coincidence." It's crazy.
That was your interview. You got the job.
Yeah. How you doing, Sponge?
Spongy is feeling pretty excellent today. Yeah, feeling good. I discovered the power of a new pillow and how it affects the sleep quality. And I feel dumb, you know. I have this pillow I love, and I used it for years and years, and I even traveled everywhere I went with this pillow. And it turns out it was actually really bad for my neck and for my sleep quality. And then I looked into it and I was like, ChatGPT was like, it's probably your pillow. Because that's how my ChatGPT talks to me. It's probably your pillow. What you talking about?
Hey,
And then,
buddy, it's probably your pillow, friend.
That's your AI doesn't talk like that. And then I changed my pillow, and then in one night, I kid you not, I was like, that felt amazing, that sleep. And my neck doesn't have the tension it did. And so the lesson for me is that there are probably other things that I'm doing that I think are great that are actually one tweak away from just being 10 times better, 100 times better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of when you learn about what is health and you're like, wait, what have I been doing my whole life? Or like, people don't stretch, you know? Like my wife just started yoga this week after I've been asking her for about a decade. And I'm like, you got to move your body. Otherwise, you're going to die, right? Like that's just like it's that whole physics thing where you got to move things. Otherwise, they just start to atrophy. They just start to fall apart. You know, entropy, the whole idea of entropy. Use it or lose it. And then she had a session, her first session, and she's like, "Wow, this feels great." I'm like, "Yeah, right." But it's like it eludes us, you know. America especially is famous for being like, "There's got to be a pill for that," instead of just being like, "You know what the pill is? It's being a healthy person." That's probably your best bet. If you want to be healthy, I'm guessing you just have to lead a healthy life.
Yeah.
And but obviously there's complications with that because health is quite a complicated thing. It can be. But what I've discovered is that why health is so complicated is because it's very individualistic. It really matters who your ancestors were, what you grew up. Like there's so many factors. There's no one thing that is known as like this food is healthy for everybody, because it's really not. There's no, I haven't heard even meat, things like meat. There's people like you should go on the carnivore diet. Other people like you should go on the vegan diet. And it really matters. Like Indian people are pretty good at not eating meat because they've been doing it for a long time. So I think their bodies are quite adapted to it. But Mongolians, if you took meat out of the entire nation of Mongolian diet, I think they'd all just spontaneously combust. There would just be a giant wildfire in the middle of that continent, because that's what they survive off of. That's like their main source of nourishment is lamb in particular. So anyway, but yeah, it's a cool idea that one tweak could drastically change the quality of your life just by looking at it. So pillow. So what are you going to do with the rock that you've been sleeping on for the past 20 years? Or are you going to put it in a like a shelf and have a plaque?
I'm gonna burn it. No, I wouldn't want anyone to use that pillow. It was really bad for my neck in retrospect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because you talk about stretching. I think every couple that's been together for some time has those things where you make fun of each other for that thing you do, and then you end up doing it yourself years later. Everyone has that. Yeah, I just think it's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's everybody in their own time, right? So it's interesting. Like with high noon stuff, when we talked, I was just speaking with some high schoolers a couple weeks ago, and I could see that they had no foundation to care about having kids. Like it was just, I brought it up, and then I stopped myself and I realized these people probably don't care about having kids. So I asked them, "How old are you?" They're all young. And I was like, do you think at all about having kids? And the girls were kind of somewhat reluctant, and then the boys were just like, they were thinking about sports. They were thinking about like chasing a ball of yarn. They're not thinking about being responsible for another person's life at all, you know? So yeah, there's like an age thing too that goes along with at certain stages, health means something different, and like your focus is different. And the older you get, like my wife and I were in our 40s, and it's like if you don't take care of yourself, things unravel a lot more the older you get. And you feel the consequences of your actions more the more responsibility you take for other people's lives. Like if I have one bad day, it impacts a whole lot of people. You guys, staff, right? Anybody that I'm mentoring. If I just start yelling at them and just start yelling at my kids, there's a lot of stories to say. Right? So in the high noon world, it's a lot harder to gain the attention of younger people because they don't necessarily feel the consequences of their actions yet. That's why the lion's share of the people listening to this podcast and attending our programs are really on the precipice of getting blessed, getting married, or they already did. And their actions now, they can feel the weight of their actions more, which is interesting. And I'd like to get into that. So today's topic, we're talking about crushes. And this is a talk that we've given. I realize that there's a bunch of talks that we've given that need some unpacking because it's impossible to speak overly at length during a talk because it's just like belaboring a point and people, there's a lot of information to convey. So I wanted to do a deep dive in some of these topics. And one of them is crushes, because attraction is something that needs to be mastered for, first of all, to avoid disaster. But second of all, these are natural mechanisms within us that they're there for a reason. God didn't put, a lot of people are like, why did God make me fall in love? It's like, God didn't do that. You have the mechanisms to fall in love, but it's where you put your attention that really dictates the results of falling in love. But the start of the talk that we've been given, especially when it's like middle school, high school, is like, would you rather fall in love with a different person every day or every week or whatever, be like somebody who has crushes a lot, or would you like to fall in love with the same person thousands of times? And the romantic side of ourselves knows how cool it would be to fall in love with the same person again and again and again and again. And Hollywood never really attempts to even talk about that. The only time they did that I can think of is that Adam Sandler movie where he falls in love with somebody who has amnesia, and she just falls in love with him a bunch of times because she forgets who he is. And like, that's the closest we can get as a society to mentioning the fact that love is a choice and you can fall in love with the same
Yeah.
person every day. But so I want to unpack these mechanisms, and I want to help you understand, I want us to like really look at and sympathize with the fact that people are in a culture that really almost twists your hand to try to fall in love with people. But it's counterproductive, but it's ultimately the same process that you can use in your marriage to have the most amazing marriage ever, but you have to do it intentionally rather than just fall prey to your underlying emotions, right? This
Yeah.
like urge to want to fall in love with somebody. So,
Yep.
Benji, I want to start this out with you. Did you ever have crushes growing up? I don't think I've ever heard this. You seem like such a religious guy that like I only fall in love with the Bible.
But Bible and my wife. Uh, yeah, crushes. Yep. Dealt with crushes for sure. Dealt with
What age
crushes.
do you remember having a crush?
10, sorry, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think my last crush before I was blessed, I was 17. No, 16 actually. And then I had one crush after I was blessed on some sister that I was at a workshop with. And that was short. It was short lived, but yeah, that's the last time I remember.
Did you have any real like problem crushes? Like it wouldn't go away?
Uh, yeah, 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 I did. It kind of feels like, honestly, it's such a foreign world to me because, we just celebrated 14-year blessing anniversary, right? So
Hey.
it it was fun doing our anniversary, but it feels like such a foreign world back then. But I remember the feelings, and I talk a lot with people that men that are dealing with crushes, and it really does feel like tunnel vision. This is the only thing that's important, and if I don't have this, I'm gonna die. That's what it feels like. And it
Yeah.
feels like a flame. The way I describe it, it's like a flame that doesn't seem to go out in you, and at the same time, you kind of keep what's the word stoking it. Keep stoking it and pouring gasoline or pouring more wood
Yeah.
onto it, and it's almost like an insidious desire to keep stoking the flame every time, or every day. Even if the person is far away. And so the
So
the
it's like
the
you have
problem,
a
I guess.
rug, you have like a some sort of blanket or something putting out the fire
Yep.
with one hand, and then the other hand is actually putting wood in the fire.
Yep.
There's like a
Yep.
contradiction within you.
Yep. And then going to your mom, dad complaining, why isn't the fire going out? I burnt myself, And
Yeah.
but I remember one distinct memory or time where I became a little aware of this, and I was like, you know what, this probably will go away. I remember having that thought, like every crush I've ever had eventually just died by itself, and I didn't have to try. It just like vanished, kind of like a fire eventually goes out, unless it's a, raging wildfire. But
Inferno.
inferno. But I remember thinking that, you know what, there's a reason it keeps going, and it's probably something to do with me
Yeah.
because I'm not even interacting with that person so much. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yep.
It's like I'm somehow contributing to this fire, and I had that awareness, and I was like, oh, like, and then as soon as I kind of, what's the word, disassociated from that, and be like, I was aware of the fact that I'm creating this, and then I could like kind of see myself more clear, and then it kind of just faded after that. But I do know that a lot of people in crushes, when you talk to them, they completely lack that self awareness. It's like
Yeah.
this is. It's like they kind of have these what is like rose colored glasses on, where they think everything they see and say and think is true. Like
Yeah.
this is how it is. She
Yeah.
likes me or he likes me. This and this happened and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And so I think for me, just having that awareness that this is not as I think it is was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, there's something to understand here. First of all, crushes aren't aren't anything other than emotions. Let's start with that. It's an emotional um, fire that is lit by a few possible reasons, right? For some people, it's somebody pays you attention because you lack that attention at home, or you lack that attention in a healthy ongoing relationship, right? Like, we are meant to be validated by our parents growing up. We're meant to be validated by our peers, healthy friends who are like, hey, you're really cool. I really love you. And a lot of us lack that, especially growing up. We're very insecure. Our parents don't have enough time and attention for us. And so when somebody gives us attention, it's like, wow, this person really sees me for who I am. And especially if they like you, that's the start of a lot of crushes, is somebody shows you attention. But it could also be your perception of their attention to you. So I remember hearing one story in a Divine Principle lecture. This guy had a friend who was a grown adult man with kids and everything. And he was walking to work one day, and there's a crowd of people coming the opposite direction. And this one lady looked at him in a way where he was shook, like to his core. And then for the next weeks and months, he would take that same passageway to work at the same time, trying to find that woman, right? Because he was like, that meant something, right? But all it was how he felt when she looked at him. And to be honest, a lot of people who are married for a while don't get that look from their spouse because they haven't trained themselves to see each other, to look at each other, to acknowledge each other. So even if you're a young person and you're not getting that acknowledgement at home, that's very true. The same thing happens in marriages where you're not getting that acknowledgement at home. That's how a lot of affairs start, is somebody kind of looks at you in a special way and they're like, oh, my wife never looks at me anymore like that. And so you start to feel like, and then you start to compare and you say, this person loves me, my wife doesn't love me. And you start playing this game. But it's the same thing, single or not. That's why this is a really important conversation. Crushes, the word is meant for like young people, right? But the essence of it, infatuation, exists until, now the biggest group of people with STDs in America are actually senior citizens. They're having crazy, weird affairs with each other in these retirement communities, these baby boomers, right? It's a really weird phenomenon. So it doesn't go away, is what I'm saying. From young through marriage, it's the same process of you put meaning on somebody else, and you start to, like you were saying, Benji, you start to stoke the fire by thinking about them. Oh, I like the way that they do this. Oh, I like their hair. They're so cool. You start attributing all these good things to them. You never look at the bad stuff. The fact that they most likely pick their nose, that they've had really smelly farts at times, right? Like, this stuff doesn't exist. The only things that exist are the most, perfect attributes that they show you. And it's very superficial. But to you, it's true. It's like, I am falling in love with this person. And this is my gripe about the idea of falling in love, is so temporary. And it's meant to be. Because again, Benji, maybe we can get into this in a bit, but like, you can fall in love with your spouse many times. And it's really exciting, actually, because you can have these seemingly new feelings of like having a crush on your wife. You can do that, vice versa, wives on husbands, and little things like, anyway, we can get into that, but I just want to continue with the, what is it? What is this attraction? Right. And from like, we have talks, and I feel like they're a bit too technical, to be honest. I would like to rework those talks so they're a lot more approachable. But at its core, when you develop a crush on somebody or an attraction towards somebody, it's that you're attracted to something about that person, but in your, I would say, childishness, your ignorance, you say it's about them. So, for instance, if somebody's really confident and they walk with confidence and they talk with confidence, you're like, wow, I love that person, or I'm falling in love with that person. But really, it's not them. It's the painting in your head that you have of them in your mind, that they are this great person. You don't actually love them in any deep, meaningful way. You just admire them for something that they represent to you, right? So it's like if it's that confidence, right? Or they're funny. Like I was a jokester. That's how I got validation growing up. And a lot of people, I had girls who liked me not because I was particularly tall or good looking, but because they thought it was cool how I could control a group of people. They thought they liked me. I thought they liked me. I thought I was great, but it was all just a mirage from both perspectives. I just represented an idea, and they fell in love with that idea, and they put my face on that idea, and they fell in love with that. They conflated the two, right? The idea of me and me was one in their minds, and that's what we do when we have like these crushes. Is like you have a need to want to love something, and this person represents the closest thing to it, so you say, okay, then I'm going to give them my love, right? And that's why it's always short-lived, because it's not them.
Yeah.
It's not them. And when you start to realize that, that's why when people fall in love, they say the average shelf life of infatuation, of feeling and love feelings, is about 18 months max, which is why in Hollywood, or like the most attractive people in the world, they can only be together for about 2 years or less. And then they break up because they actually don't like each other. They just like the idea of each other. It's like, I want to like you, but actually I hate you. So we're going to break up. Right? Like that's just what we're used to in society. That's what dating is. Dating is, I remember growing up, no relationship lasted more than 2 years in high school and college. They just can't, because you don't actually care about that person. You just want them to be something for you that they can't be, because that's not them. It's who you want them to be. You want to shape them.
Brings up an important point in attraction, because I think the fundamental reason it's the idea of crushes is hard to understand, and it's very easy to justify because it is based in something that's healthy, which is attraction and God-given. But like all emotions, stress, boredom, loneliness, anxiety, they can be used in a destructive way. And what you're talking about, what I'm hearing, is utilizing the emotion of attraction to something that is actually not good for you, is actually not healthy. So it's really based in some underlying need, like or insecurity or desire to escape, or all the things. But to think that like a teenager, for example, knows how to use attraction in a healthy way is kind of ridiculous. It's a learning process, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Learning how to use that drive in finding the thing to be attracted to. Because if you ask people, like, what are you attracted to? Like, you're talking, what is the idea or the identity you're attracted to? If people are really aware, self-aware and honest with themselves, usually it's some kind of, in other words, like superficial, external thing, or some characteristic that is more fleeting and probably won't last more than a few years.
Yeah.
And so that's like, it's just a very simple way. It's very easy to conflate like attraction, crushes, infatuation, because it all on the surface looks the same. But internally, you're attracting to what is like whatever we're learning from the porn industry, whatever we're learning from Instagram, whatever we're learning from the news, TV, from models, from everything, just validation that we're getting. And that's the dangerous game to play, is that we're living in a world where it's like your external form, your material form is what validates you.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. Like, what's the conversation that most people have, at least in my country, in the US, about life? What's important? It's like, what kind of job do you have? What kind of car do you have? Do you own a house? Right? Like, these are the conversations that matter to people, which is like cool, but really, like, that doesn't matter nearly as much, is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
as the internal stuff we're talking about. And so I guess for me, like, when people are telling me about the crushes, and they really feel like this is an attraction, I'm like, okay, what are you attracted to? What parts? And many times it's like, well, she or he feels this way, or acts this way, or has this thing. It's like, okay, well, is that something that that's gonna last forever?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really I was just I'm doing research for another episode, and there's a guy that was talking about addiction, and he was talking about how, in essence, it's the narrowing of focus of what can bring you joy. So like the more addicted you are to something, it's the less that anything else can bring you joy. You just need that one thing.
Hey, just a quick interruption to tell you about the 40-day high noon challenge. If you're trying to find a way to start living a high noon life today with no shadows and create a radiant blessing, then this simple challenge is for you. We will send you daily lessons from our team that will keep you motivated on your journey. It's totally free, guys, and you'll get constant content directly to you. Just sign up today at highnoon.org/challenge. That is highnoon.org/challenge. All right, back to the show.
And when you think about somebody who has a crush, it's like that's all that they want to think about. They don't want to do anything. They really become obsessed. It's an addiction because if you think about it, and I've definitely had crushes a ton growing up, and what happens is you start to believe that if you could just have this one thing, all your other problems will go away. I just need this one thing. And it's very much like an addict because it's a form of escapism. It's like, what? That's, I remember reading in Fight the New Drug, they interviewed this guy who was a predator. He was a human trafficker. And basically the conversation was like, how do you find victims? And he had a very clear system. He would go to public places like malls and he would approach young ladies and he would say, wow, you're very attractive. And if she got really confident and said, yeah, thank you, like if they knew who they were, their self-worth, then he would walk away. But if they got really shy and they started to say, oh, no, I don't think so, then he would know that he has a victim because they don't know their self-worth, right? So this idea of like falling in love, the first step, if you're single, is to learn how to fall in love with life. I would say fall in love with yourself, but that can easily be misconstrued to narcissism, which is obviously prevalent in our society where people only think about themselves. So it's not falling in love with yourself, it's falling in love with life to the extent that you're comfortable with yourself, okay? If you can do that, you don't need anything else or anybody else in order to make you feel fulfilled. And that to me is like the first blessing, is like being somebody who appreciates life and has gratitude for life itself and is very minimalistic in their needs, right? That person becomes very marriageable, right? Somebody who's really needy, who needs all this stuff in order to sustain any level of happiness, that's called high maintenance, right? And that's men and women who are like, I need this and I need this, otherwise I'm nothing. It's like, oh man, that's a very fragile person right there. So I think that's the first thing is crushes. You'll be less prone to crushes the more that you just are grateful for people and for life, for the little things. And it doesn't mean that you won't be attracted. Attraction, this is the thing, is that in our sexualized culture, it's like you can't be attracted to something or someone without it being sexual. Like you're meant as a guy like myself to be attracted to other guys, but like that guy is really cool. I feel comfortable with this person. I like this person, but it's not meant to be sexual. Just like, hey, I like this guy, and in some cultures you'll see men and men, women and women holding hands, and is completely non-sexual. Like in Mongolia, you see this a lot, especially women and girls, and you see them holding hands, and it's just because they're attracted to each other as friends. There's nothing beyond that, right? And it's very pure, very beautiful. So the idea of being attracted to yourself, being attracted to life, being comfortable in your own skin, that is the first step of kind of helping to lose that grip that crushes have over you, right? Because it's a need. It is a form of escapism for sure. Crushes are like, and people have crushes on celebrities. It's like, oh, I remember these girls. I think we've talked about this on the podcast. I remember this group of girls in the hallway fighting actually fighting, yelling at each other. It didn't come to blows. It didn't come to punches, but it got close, fighting over which Backstreet Boy was the one. Because it wasn't like which one's more attractive. It's like, no. I think one girl was like Nick. She's all in on Nick. And like the other ones are trash. And she's like, how dare you? It's like, these guys don't give a crap about you. They are a commercial product, whatever. So
yeah.
that stuff like whatever. Yes, your eyes don't lie. There's some people who are just really good looking. Great. You probably won't want to spend a lot of time with them. I actually read an article about that guy, Robert Patterson or whatever, the guy that was in Twilight and now he's having a comeback. He's actually a good actor. He was Batman or the Batman, whichever one. And there was some girl stalking him. He was shooting a movie in Europe somewhere, like Spain or something, and there's a girl stalking him, and he kept on seeing her. So he was like by himself, so he just went up to her and he's like, "Let's go out for dinner." And she was freaking out, like, "Oh my God." And so he took her out, and he said throughout the conversation, they were just eating dinner. She got so bored of him. He's like, "This is who I am." And then she just stopped stalking him, right? Because
Smart.
again, it wasn't about him. It was like the idea of, oh my God, he's so cool. She only knows him in the movie. She doesn't know who he really is. So when she got to know him, she no longer had a crush on him. So that's a big thing is, you're in love with this idea of the person, not them, which is not fair to you and is not fair to them. And it just makes everything stressful. And the only way that you can make that distinction is not by yourself. You need to talk about crushes, ideally with your parents, if they can handle it, or a parent figure, not friends, because a lot of times friends are also struggling, and they'll be like, "Oh, you should just ask them out or something." They don't know. Their heads are barely above water. You need somebody with a sober perspective to be like, "Look, that's adorable, but it's not real," and to help you work through it, because you're not sober. You are drunk off of this emotion, and it's blurring your vision. You can't make good decisions, and the only way out of it is with somebody else, a perspective of somebody who's not involved in that situation.
Yeah. I'm mentoring a brother that just got out of he's not in our church, but he got out of a 10-year marriage. Sorry, let me rephrase that. He didn't get out of a 10 marriage. I'm saying that like he escaped.
Yeah.
He ended a 10-year marriage, and then he started dating around, and then he was texting me about this lady, this woman he's seeing. He's like, "I'm seeing a woman, and she's amazing. We've been seeing each other for 2 weeks, and he said she loves everything about me and accepts everything about me, and not like my other wife." Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe the just ignorance of this guy who, it's like, you can't compare a 2-week relationship that's completely based in infatuation to a 10-year marriage.
Yeah.
You can't. Like, you have every incentive to accept and like everything about someone if you're getting to know them for 2 weeks, And so I could see clearly that it was a massive form of just escapism and infatuation. And we say escapism, and I think because that's an easier way to understand addiction, because some people, when they hear, "Oh, your crush is an addiction," that's really hard to swallow. And
Sure.
It is. But if that's hard to swallow, just think of it as escapism, and think of all the times that you're really struggling with this crush. Think of the times that you're really, mentally rehearsing and mentally obsessing over what she said, what he said, those interactions and stuff. Usually it's the same times that we're feeling lonely or stressed, right? Especially lonely or depressed or anxious or all those emotions. And then you have to be honest and be like, okay, is this a form of escapism? If so, the next natural question is like, what am I escaping from?
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a much healthier way to view an addiction. Because some people like to just wake up every day and say, I have an addiction. I am an addict. And that's their identity. And they live their life like that. And sure, that might be true, but isn't it more helpful just to label it more accurately and be like, I have a tendency to want to escape certain emotions to certain behaviors. And that's it. Crushes is one of them.
Yeah.
And if you can see it like that, then you can actually see yourself more accurately and be like, okay, what am I escaping from? And you address that. And more than likely, you'll also be addressing the same thing that keeps people going to any other form of escapism, like porn, overeating, sleeping, whatever,
Yeah, and when you talk about that guy, he wants somebody to fully accept him, and that's like a basic human need, right? But To get that, I mean, the addiction, what crushes do are, it's to get the plastic version of the real thing, this very impermanent form of acceptance that can't last, not in that form, right? And instead of going to having a network, and we have less and less networks of parents, aunts, uncles who are validating us. But also sometimes we want validation when and acceptance when we're being weasels. Like I know plenty of people who they're having an affair when they're already spiraling out of life, and they want somebody to just love them regardless of the fact that they're being jerks, right? They're not getting validation sometimes because they're not validatable. They need they need to learn a lesson, right? So a lot of times, yeah, it's like the escapism is we want the good stuff without addressing the other stuff. And so I do want to get into, we don't have that much time left, but I want to get into this idea that you can use these same mechanisms to fall in love with your spouse, right? And what it is like to have a crush on your spouse. It's happened. I can't say that it happens a tremendous amount, but it's definitely happened, I would say, a handful of times in my marriage, where especially we've been through something. We've had some argument or whatever, and then through reconciliation, we go to this next level of our marriage and things feel new and fresh. And I remember a couple instances. One, my wife and I were just fighting like crazy. We were in Bali. It was during the pandemic, and we were just really tense. And then at some point, we started to reconcile, and I got nervous around her, and I was too nervous to hold her hand. And I told her this, and she laughed in my face, and she was like, "What's wrong with you?" kind of thing. But I was just lapping it up because, like, even when I went to go kiss her, it was like, can I even do this? It was like I had this brand new relationship with my wife because I was a new person. Yeah. And this is the biggest thing. The life lesson that life has been teaching me so hard is like everything feels new when you are new, including the people in your life. And when you see them with new eyes, and that requires a lot of gratitude, a lot of introspection. But when you do the work, your kids aren't just, they're always like this. And you stop saying stuff like that. You're always like this. It's not the case. It's like they're new to you, and you can develop new forms of attraction when you yourself are new. So it's the opposite. I just want to offer this. Yeah. Life can be new every day if you practice that. And that's the whole point of spirituality, is to see life like a child. Jesus was very clear about like, how do you get into the kingdom of heaven? You have to have a heart like a child. And that's life. Life can be heaven when you look at life like a child, new, fresh. Otherwise, the opposite way, the consumeristic way that we're used to, is you have to fill your life with new stuff all the time. You either become new every day, or you find new stuff to make you feel new. And that's the Amazon approach of like, I need to get something, and you just get something, and it comes to your house, and you're like, oh, this is not what I expected. I just got that. There's something called Lazada here. They don't have Amazon, and I bought this vacuum cleaner. In the videos, I was so excited to get a vacuum cleaner because we don't have one. And I love a clean house. And then it showed up, and it just didn't work. And we can't return it. It's just a mess. And that's what life, like if you live that kind of way where you always need stuff, you'll always be disappointed. Just like that guy that you're talking about. He has the consumeristic, like, I have this great new relationship. She fully accepts me. She doesn't know you. She doesn't know who you're only showing her one slice of this pie of many slices, and she likes that one slice. But guess what? She's going to get to that slice with the gross stuff on it. And she's not going to like that flavor. But when you have somebody in your life that you've invested in, like you and me, you've been blessed for 14 years. Our 13-year anniversary is coming up in March. When somebody can accept you and love you deeply in spite of all your many gross slices in your pie, that lands in a way that nurtures your soul, not your ego, not your childish, needy emotions, but a part of you that cannot be accessed or nurtured or appreciated in any other way. And that's the purpose of marriage, is I wake up and I choose you. And every day I choose you out of my own free will, not because of some agreement, some, that like some marriage certificate, but because I stood up in front of everybody and I said, I choose this person out of all people. And every day I continue to choose you. That is the greatest feeling. That's actually, I've put that into words with my wife. And I said, look, I don't need anything else in this world other than you to choose me willingly, not begrudgingly every day. And if you can do that, and if I can do that, then we'll be okay. And the days that we don't choose each other are chaotic. I gotta say, when I'm like, why are you like that? It's me not accepting her. It's me not choosing her. It's wishing that she was somebody else. Me like, and that's just my immaturity.
I love this topic, Andrew. I love it. When you said act like a child to get in the kingdom of heaven, the image of a child for me, the essence of a child is very present. It's someone that has no concept of the future or the past. There's no pain from the past. There's no expectations of what's going to happen in the future for the most part. And then we kind of, as kids get older into teenagehood and beyond, they start to extrapolate fears into the future and resentment and regret from the past and anger. But a child, who's, let's say under 7 years old, they're just there. They're just complete instinctually just there. You could put them anywhere in the world, like in a box outside in the rain with nothing, and they'll find something to do. They will not, you know what I'm saying? Don't do that. And I've never done that.
Parenting Tips by Benjy. This is sponsored to you by Dysfunctional Parenting.
I always imagine doing that to my kids on their birthday. Just like the worst thing ever, just to see how they would react. Because I have a theory that it's like kids are more resilient and present than we think they are, right? And we're the ones, the adults are the ones that are like all fearful of their future and what if this happens? And, like for example, kids fight and they argue and they get through it and they grow from it. But a lot of the reason that it's stressful for parents is because we try to project our fears onto them about the future. It's like, oh, if they're fighting now, what did it look like when they're teenagers? And that's why it gets stressful many times.
Yeah.
So my point is that I think in order for my wife and I, for any couple to really do that, falling in love and being new together every day, it takes being present in the sense of just not bringing the regrets and pains of yesterday or the fears or anxiety about the future and just being there with them. I'll give you an example of when the last time I felt in love with my wife, crushing on my wife hard, was this last, 1 week ago. Yeah, 1 week ago. We had our 14-year anniversary, and we went to good old Cheesecake Factory in the US of A. And we were eating our cheesecake, and we do this thing every year where we...
they serve other food. They don't just serve cheesecake.
That's all we see is the cheesecake. And then we do this thing where we write down appreciations for how many years we've been blessed. So it was 14. So 14 unique things that I appreciate about the other person that I've never said before. And it has to be different and new every year. And so I was like, okay, let's do our thing. We were eating a cheesecake. We wrote it on our phones. I wrote mine. She wrote hers. I came up with 14 brilliant appreciations and gratitude points. And I said them to her like a poet. And then she gave hers. There were not 14, there were 7, and there were complaints. 7 complaints. Okay.
That's amazing. Is she
Oh
not a
my
good
God.
student?
She's a baller. And here's the thing though. I was laughing hysterically. I was like, I cannot believe that we're doing this exercise of appreciation and you wrote 7 things you want me to improve on myself, right?
That's fantastic.
And I was like, that's not how this works. And she's like, that's how I was feeling. Right? She's like, in this moment, I'm feeling like I want you to change and work on these 7 things. And I'm not feeling appreciation. And my point is like that conversation could have gone really bad. I mean, maybe like a few years ago, I would have been like mortified, hurt from that. But I was just like, this is so funny that a human can exist on this in this universe that thinks like that. And I was like, how are you like this? Like, what do you like? This is not how it works.
Who raised you, girl?
Yeah, I was like, in what universe do you exist? And she was like, that's just how I felt. And she felt completely justified. It wasn't like she's trying to, make a jab at me. She's just like, this is how I'm feeling. And that's, to me, that's like the blessing right there. It's like, is when you can be in the moment, just accept like, this is who you are. And that's funny. It's just fun to be like that. And that was a moment where I was like, this is like, I really love this person because of this,
Yeah, that's wonderful. All while eating very dense, sugary cake. I love it.
Oh yeah.
If you didn't choke on the cake, you certainly choked on those 7 complaints. It's great. Yeah, so everybody, I think, this is a topic we will get into in the future. We'll continue to go down this road. I think it's unbelievably helpful. Nobody's immune from crushes. Nobody's immune from falling in love. There's plenty of great people, powerful people who can control the world, like presidents, Bill Clinton, or many other people who just, they're very capable people, but they're still susceptible to attraction and can't control themselves. And it's because they're not getting the real source of nourishment from a healthy place, like your family, like your home. And if you're single, that really looks like working on the first 2 realms of heart, right? Which is to be a child and to be a sibling, to just bask in, the love of a parent or a parental figure and brothers and sisters, and to just really master that, to have really healthy relationships. And if you're married already, if you're blessed, then to also really nurture the other 2, if you are a parent or not. And that's when you're fulfilled, you can still see attractive people. You don't become blind to them, but you don't make meaning out of it. And somebody can even tempt you, and it's not a temptation because you have somewhere else you'd rather be, right? If you have reservations for the nicest restaurant in town, you're still going to see the McDonald's on the way. And if you, or whatever, like you still will, I think Burger King is the one that shoots out the smell from their restaurant. So you really smell it. You'll still smell it. And if you love burgers, you'll be like, that smells good. But you got somewhere to be. It's the nicest restaurant that you love so much. And like that's why you need to make your life something that you don't want to escape from. And then you'll still see the beautiful things, but it's just like, oh, there's a beautiful thing. Anyway, I was gonna do this thing, right? And so that's what life is meant to be, is not to be. Religion oftentimes was about neglecting or negating or trying to ignore all that the world has to offer. But I think it's a real dismissal of the beauty that God creates. We're meant to see it, but we're not meant to just obsess over it or make it mean something. It's just beauty. Beauty is great, but it's not everything. And there's a lot more dimensions to beauty than just how somebody looks or how they treat you. So anyway, everybody, good luck out there. And if you ever do have crushes, because I know that a lot of people do, and I've heard of recently situation that's mortifying of a couple that are breaking up. The husband had an affair. They're not breaking up, but it's just things are really complicated and nobody's immune. You got to stay sharp. And that means having really fulfilling relationships in your life. Otherwise, we do stupid things out of desperation for love, out of just trying to get any amount of love from anywhere we can get it. So good luck out there, folks. Please reach out to us if you're feeling like you're in a tight spot. We're happy to talk to you. And God bless your very souls.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.